Hi, today we're here with Aimee Baxter in the Office of Financial Aid at Louisiana Tech University, and we're going to talk about some frequently asked questions that we've gotten on the CARES Act, how you apply, what it means, what you can qualify for. So thanks for being here, Aimee. How are you doing today?
We're doing pretty good today,
So tell me, up to now, how many applications have y'all gotten for the CARES Act grant?
well, yesterday we probably got about 900 applications that we're currently reviewing, and we're hoping to increase that number as we go the next several days until May 15th.
So May 15th is the deadline?
Yes, that is
for
the deadline. If we have funds remaining, we'll award after that as well. We're trying to get the students to apply for those needed expenses they have.
Okay, so explain to us what the CARES Act is.
It was federal legislation. It was sent to universities to be used for student expenses that they incurred for campus disruption, and it's to be given directly to students. And Louisiana Tech has instituted an application for students to apply for those funds for those needed expenses.
So tell us, who can apply for CARES funds? Is it every student?
Currently enrolled students for spring, graduate, undergraduate students, it doesn't matter if they're full-time or part-time. They have to have some need and some expenses they incur during the disruption to campus. And they would need to submit the application so that we can review those.
Okay, so does this cover, I know this is a question we've had a lot, does this cover international students and daca recipients?
Originally, we believed when the information came out, we thought that those students would be covered. However, the legislation came out that modified that, and the DACA students, I'm afraid, are not covered.
So just as an editorial aside, we are working with university administrators to try to find some resources for international students. We know that they are in a tight spot right now.
That's correct. The university is working to find some additional funds for those students to try to help them with their expenses as well.
So can you walk us through the process? What steps do students have to take to apply?
Students, the best bet to complete the application would be, of course, to have done their FAFSA for 1920. If they have not done that, they can go ahead and do that. We usually receive that in 3 to 5 days once the student has done that. Then the next step on the application would be to complete an application on our scholarship system, which is called Academic Works, where they log in and complete a general application and then submit additional information for the CARES grant application. We would review those and then let the student know what funding they will receive, and those that are approved would have money posted directly to their student account and would receive a refund.
We talk in the information we've sent that students have to be eligible to participate in programs under Section 484 in Title IV of the Higher Education Act of 1965. What does that mean?
That means that students have to generally complete the FAFSA. There are some eligibility things that are checked when they complete the FAFSA to see if they are eligible citizens or eligible non-citizens for additional aid. There are some factors involved in that we posted on the web, where a student must be eligible for satisfactory academic progress, meeting the requirements for federal aid, even though it's not considered as estimated financial assistance in the normal way that federal aid is. We do still have to consider if they're eligible for federal aid.
So if students have been enrolled in online programs, can they still apply for this for these funds?
The funds are not available for students who are enrolled in exclusively online programs, where their whole program is entirely made up of online courses and it's specifically for online programs.
So we talk about these CARES funds covering expenses that were incurred because of campus closure. What kinds of expenses are we talking about?
Different costs. It can be different things based on what the student has had to do. We've had some that have submitted some computer expenses. For instance, a student might have had a computer that worked for their normal classes, but when they went to the online coursework, it would not support some of the functions that they needed to do for the online programs. It could be some medical expenses that may have been incurred, or maybe they moved off campus and had to seek additional housing, or maybe a roommate moved out, and so their expenses went up due to the campus disruption, things like that. Lots of different kinds of expenses. We have the check boxes on the application where they food, housing, childcare, medical, things like that, that they would actually check and let us know what kinds of expenses they had.
So tell me, how much can students apply for?
There's a base level amount for the basic information, and it's a sliding scale. Basically, we look at various factors like, did they complete the FAFSA? Do they have financial need? Are they receiving the Pell Grant? Things like that. They must have incurred expenses, though, due to the campus disruption. That is one of the main components.
So is this a loan? Does the money need to be repaid?
No, it's not a loan. It is a grant, and it will be given directly to the students, and they do not have to repay that.
Is the funding going to impact future financial aid?
No, it would not impact future financial aid. As I stated earlier, it's not considered financial aid assistance or federal assistance in the normal way, so it would not impact that.
Can students apply for funding more than once? Say they apply now, they have certain expenses that they've come in contact with, and then later they have more expenses. Can they apply more than once?
Right now, we've set the application up to apply only once. If students forgot once they submitted the application and they forgot to include something on there, they can go in and edit that and update the information, but it is specifically the one application. If funding is left after May 15th, where students have not exhausted all the funds that we have, then we might open another application at that point. But we would notify students in the presidential updates and emails and things like that to let them know those funds were available for additional assistance.
So what is the deadline again to apply?
May 15th is the deadline we're looking at, and we're hoping to continually get more applications so that we can assist students.
So how are students going to receive this money?
Once we process the review and approve those students, we would post it directly on their student account. They would see it on there, and then it would refund in a direct payment to the student. Hopefully the students are set up for a direct deposit. That's something we recommend they do, because they would get the funds quicker, and it would go directly into their checking or savings account at that point. Those students who don't set up for that would get a paper check, but those would have to be mailed to the students, so that therefore would take longer to try to help these students with their expenses.
So are there things that a student, if they're going to get a paper check, what do they need to do to make sure it gets to them as quickly as possible?
They might want to check their BOSS account in the registrar's information, where they have their permanent address and things like that would be set up directly coming to the comptroller's office as to what address to mail that check to.
And if they want to set up direct deposit, which office do they need to work with to set that up?
The comptroller's office, the cashier's email at lautech.edu would handle those, but they can do it online. There's some steps included in the instructions on the CARES Act information on how to set up direct deposit.
So let's talk some more about the students that we had, that we asked to move off campus if they were able. If they received a portion of that payment for housing and meals reimbursed to them, is this considered a high cost expenditure because they had to come up with extra money to pay for more housing and food?
Yes, it would be considered a high cost expenditure, and they would check that box on their application that they did have a high cost expenditure. The easiest way to document that in the high cost category, there is a place for students to put a summary of their circumstances. They do need to fill that out. We have seen a few applications where they haven't done that, and we'll be contacting those students to update their applications. But they would need to put a summary and then submit some sort of documentation. Those students who were asked to move off campus, they can document that by doing a print screen of their student account that would show that they got a portion of that back in a refund. So make sure you actually include the documentation that has that information that shows that they did move off campus for that. But that would be sufficient documentation for the review of the high cost assistance.
So what's the most common question that y'all gotten since we opened up the application?
How to get into Academic Works probably is the most one. Those students had not used it before. It is a scholarship portal. So we do recommend students who maybe don't believe they are or are not eligible for the CARES grant that they go into the Academic Works and do a general application. Students, when they first log in there, do have to submit a general application where it asks interests and things like that. But the good thing about the system is that it reviews them for additional scholarship funding for now and in the future. So it kind of matches them up to some of the things that they meet the requirements of and reminds them of other applications that might come open during the year.
So that can help in the end, even if they don't feel like filling it out in the first place, or even if it takes a little longer to get that
Right.
done.
It might take a little longer if a student's never accessed it just to do the general application, but it's not hard questions. It asks their interests, their hobbies, things they're interested in doing maybe in the future and things like that. So it's not something that's very difficult to fill out. It is online. And once they've completed the general application, they would go in and look for the CARES grant application and submit that, which only has a few questions on it. So it's not something that's a real difficult application. We try to make it as easy as possible for the students to really try to get that assistance to them as quickly as we can.
Okay, so who can they contact if none of these questions are what they have and they just really need someone to help talk them through this process?
The webpage for the financial aid office at the bottom corner, you'll see a chat with financial aid. Our financial aid counselors are answering that. We have had a high volume, obviously, this week with lots of different questions, and we'll walk them through those steps and give them instructions to do that. That's probably the quickest way to get an answer to a question. If they have a really in-depth question, they might want to email the caresact@latech.edu email, and we are responding to those as quickly as we possibly can.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Aimee, for answering our questions. I know we'll have more people ask questions, and so if you have additional questions, ask them below, and we'll get Aimee to answer them for us later.
Yes.
Once again, if you want to find out all this information about the CARES Act grant, you can look on the financial aid website, and there's a chat feature down in the corner that's live, so you can talk to a financial aid counselor right then. You can also email caresactgrant@latech.edu, or you can visit latech.edu/cares-act. Thanks, Aimee. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. We do hope the students get in there and submit their applications so that we can review them for some of those expenses they've incurred.